Good evening, everyone. Don Anderson and Sonny Danforth here from Captive Audience. And oh, I'm sorry, Sonny. Is it Doge, Maha, and Maga? I'm sorry. We got a new name every week.
Oh, I'm Sunny Danforth, but I'll tell you, Doge along with Maha equals MAGA. That's
Yes,
kind of what I thought.
yes, it
It's
does indeed. And what I can't think of a more brilliant campaign slogan that what Trump has came up with. And I'm not sure who came up with that, but there's so many great things about that. You can go from make America great again, make America healthy again, make America safe again. It goes on, and every cabinet appointment leads us closer and closer to that. But I know we got a whole lot of stuff to cover. So I thought we'd start with this whole thing with Vance and his talk to Europe, because I thought that was one of the most, in a week of phenomenal things, for me, that was one of the highlights of the week for me. And let me just describe why. So he goes to Europe, gets in front of those leaders, and tells them something that an American president hasn't said to their face, I don't think, since Reagan. I'm not sure if even Reagan said that. And about in its essence, it's like we have this issue with Ukraine and Russia, but what the heck are we fighting for? And then he goes on to describe how the Europeans are no longer listening to their own people. Every one of those countries is run by a leftist elite that's not listening to the majority of the population anymore. And one of the great examples he gave was a case in Great Britain where a man, I can't think of his name, but he was 50 meters away from an abortion clinic
Mhm.
praying silently for 1 minute. And the British police arrested the man and threw him in jail for praying silently. That sound familiar, by the way? But when your country's doing those kinds of things, and you can't have freedom of speech, when you can't have freedom of religion, what the heck will be fighting for? And if Europeans are standing for that kind of stuff, we're sure as heck not going to send troops over there to defend that. And I think, in effect, he said that, and they practically lost their minds. There were lots of other things he said, but I think at his core, it was that you need to listen to your own people and not be overturning elections, and not be restricting freedom of speech, which is what Europeans have been doing left and right. So I thought that was one of the most brilliant things that I've seen the whole week. And one last thing I would add, I love Trump because he is Trump doesn't mind brawling. And we've needed a brawler in this position for a long time. But the great thing about Vance is the eloquent statesman. If you listen to Vance speak, what a 1-2 combination they are. So saying the same things, one is eloquent and one is the brawler. And I think you got to have them both. Sonny, your thoughts?
Well, I totally agree. And the backlash from his speech has been amazing to watch. You're seeing some other countries totally agreeing. And yet, Germany says, no, we've got free speech. No, you don't. When you're arresting people for thought, or you've got places that people can't even pray in certain areas, now you can't pray in your home. And to realize that Germany they're reverting back to what they had already gotten rid of once.
Of all countries that should know better, you would think
Yes,
Germany would know better.
you would. But this is where, when history isn't taught, and that generation that fought, the greatest generation ever, that fought World War II, it is those people dying off and the others are forgetting. That's how that's allowed to happen. And they go, no, we don't. We have freedom of speech here. We just have to have side rails on it. Like this one woman was talking there. We just have to have some side rails. Not everybody should be able to speak that way. Well, that's not.
Well, I'll tell you, my wife needs to make this distinction. This is not based on any social science or anything. This is observation. I think she has a point. And the point is this: the Europeans don't have it. They don't have freedom in their DNA like we do here.
Yeah.
I mean, they come from monarchies, and in a monarchical situation, your rights, you don't really have rights. You're subjects. You're not citizens. There's a huge difference. And we're one of only two countries in the world. I think Israel's the only other one that mentions God in its constitution, and it directly states that your rights come from a power outside of that here, and that individuals are most important. And I think that's the distinction. And so Europeans in general are much more willing to roll over and be told what to do. They don't even have the right to bear arms, and we have that. And there's a reason for that, because the founders understood that the most dangerous thing is government.
Absolutely. I mean, our founders, they knew where they were coming from, and they did not want it repeated in our country
Hmm.
as a brand new nation being formed. And thank God for that wisdom and that fight, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. And you look
Yeah.
at the outrageousness of what we just faced with this whole European alliance. So you got NATO. We've asked them to pay a measly 4% for their own defense. I think that's what the requirement is, and none of those countries are meeting it. So you mean to tell me we're carrying the defense for NATO? Hell, we got an ocean between us and Russia. What are we worried about? We got an ocean between us and China. What are we worried about? So we're paying more for your defense, and in exchange for that, you're going to like send illegals over here, support illegals being sent here. You're going to do all those, and then on top of that, we're going to run a trade deficit with you because of the way that you've aligned your tariffs against us. It is so awesome to have an administration finally come along and look out for Americans first. You know what? We're going to tariff you exactly the way you tariff us. And it's inarguable. How can you argue what's wrong with that? If you don't like the tariff, then reduce yours.
And you know what? That's fair. Fair is fair. Make it fair across the border, across the board,
Mhm.
and let the chips fall where they fall.
Yeah.
When NAFTA was signed, the North America Free Trade Agreement, going back to Clinton,
Mhm.
I realized that that was the beginning of the end of America, of the businesses in America. It was easier to bring America down than rise others up, but it was meant to do that
Mhm.
the jobs were going to go to other nations and help rise them up. But because we were such a powerhouse, we are a powerhouse, but we've been in innovation and in producing goods, but a lot of that has left. But with the talk of tariffs, businesses are starting to come back. They're stating we're coming back, and that with the whole tariff, it's bringing people home, companies back
Yeah.
to America. And frankly, we need to produce things. We cannot just rely on China. All of these things. I mentioned this one time. I'll just very quickly. I mentioned this, I think, once, maybe twice on Captive Audience here. I went looking for a mousetrap
Mhm.
not made in China. And
Mhm.
I spent, probably $10 in gas looking for that
Mhm.
$1.99 mousetrap.
Mhm.
And there is none to be had. There are no mousetraps made in America.
Mhm.
And because I'm a person, when I go shopping, I look at the bottom, I look at where it's made, and I set it down.
Mhm. And
So
see,
we have to
yeah.
produce things in this country, and we need to support our American producers.
See, I believe the elites did that on purpose. They knew that that's what would happen. It would gut
Yes.
the middle class and the working class, and that's precisely what has happened. I wasn't paying attention at that time, but you think about all those manufacturing jobs. You look at Detroit, like almost a ton of that automotive manufacturing fled to Mexico,
Mhm.
which does a couple of things. Number one, it guts us, right? And so now we have an increased problem with young men and women unable to get jobs without the $100,000 college degree, which 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 has obviously been deflated in terms of its value as well, um, and it's shipped those jobs to other countries and made us weaker, which is precisely part of their strategy. I mean, nothing else would explain that.
Yeah.
And it becomes a defense issue too, because if you can't build stuff in your own country, and then you wind up with a scenario where you have to defend yourself, you got to manufacture that where. Same with medicines. We saw that when the whole
Yes.
manufactured COVID crisis happened. There was stuff we had to get the masks from China. Now, how sad is that?
Yeah. Yes, and so the playing field is starting to get leveled a bit, And it's going to, just anytime you clean your house, it's going to get a little messy. And unfortunately, some things are going to cost a little more before things turn around. But we have to do it to save our nation. We 100% have to do it, which leads us to Doge, because Doge had to happen. And I thank God every day. I wake up every day and I get on X and go, okay, what's happened now? you know?
Well, I think when we said the swamp, I mean, we all knew it was bad. I don't think any of us could have imagined this. I mean, for example, I'm sure you've all heard this by now with the Social Security. They got the files of people up to 159 years old in their database. Millions of people over 100 years, 100 years of age. I think only 0.27% of the population, I looked it up, is over 100 years old right now. But we got millions in there. This is worse than the Chicago voting what do you call it? Voting of the dead scandal. It's incredible.
Well, it is incredible, and thank God Trump was reading it out loud, so the media would have to cover it because he's reading all of this. He goes, "What about these people?" Well, when you add it up, that's about 18 million, excuse me, or so people that are well over 100 years old, and are those the voters from
Well,
2020?
that's
That's
another
what
question.
I question. One, yes, those are people that have the ability, because in reading different stories and articles, that while they may or may not have gotten Social Security, having an active Social Security number allows them to draw other benefits and even grants, loans, business loans, things like that. And it's like, oh my word,
Yeah.
what a fraud. This stuff has to be shut down, but it also needs to be prosecuted.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The prosecutions have to happen. And it's not about revenge, it's
No,
about justice.
it's
You know,
accountability.
it's accountability. If there's no penalty for doing wrong, you're
Yeah.
opening the door and encouraging people to continue to do it.
Yeah.
Those who think that way don't respond to morality and ethics. And this is a hard thing, I think, for generally decent people to really comprehend. There are some people who will do crime if they can get away with it. And that's just the fact of life.
Absolutely. So I have a story here from the Epic Times that Doge has saved about 50 billion so far, says our new Treasury Secretary. And I'll tell you, Besant, and he says, this is a very good start. Oh my gosh,
And
$50 billion?
in what, a month?
Yeah, and not even a month. It's a month of Trump's presidency. Today's 30 days. But you know what? We haven't had Doge a month. And then we had it stopped for a few days or a week or so through the courts. And the court says, nope, you know what? The president has the right to do this.
Wow.
And thank goodness for that part. But it is just amazing. And where they're finding this money, I saw a story today on Twitchy that says Doge dug up $2 billion goodie bag for Stacey Abrams' nonprofit. And this nonprofit is relatively new. It was started in late 2023, and it is called, it was the EPA that awarded Power Forward Communities a grant, a 2 billion grant in April of 2024 as part of the agency's greenhouse gas reduction fund
Wow.
program. And Stacey Abrams isn't anything into that, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. You cannot make it up. And then where did that money actually go? I mean, who knows? Just because they put a label on it. Who
Right. And
knows?
this is part of that money that was the $20 billion that they found, the EPA found, that was put in some bank accounts. And then it was doled here and it was supposed to go to like 7 or 8 agencies. And it was $20 billion. And so the EPA administrator, he had announced on February 13th that they discovered this parked in outside financial institutions before leaving office, limiting the federal government's oversight of the program. But, you know, going back to what in the Treasury, what Doge has found is the Treasury never, they just approved whatever the expenditure was.
Yeah, they
They
know
just
what.
approved everything,
Yeah,
even though they knew it was wrong.
yeah, it's incredible. What that goes back to, we talked about this before. And I think it was John Adams who said this Constitution was written for moral people, and here's why: if you have unprincipled, immoral people at the reins of power, this is the sort of thing that you get. It's another one of those arguments for why government should be small, because you're always going to have people who are capable of this sort of thing, and they gravitate towards government. So the smaller government is, the less damage they can do. There's always going to be a certain amount of damage, but you want to keep it small because that's what we have. That's human. It's human nature.
Yes. And then today, I heard that Musk said, you know, what if we do a Doge dividend? I'm like, what?
Boy, I tell
So,
you,
you know, a percentage of whatever Doge claws back. Well, let's see, $50 billion. So, the story from the Epic Times is Musk and Trump are to discuss sending, you know, the possibility of sending U.S. taxpayers $5,000 checks using Doge savings, a Doge dividend.
well,
Imagine that.
it'd be a lot better than the cell phones that Obama was handing out to the welfare queens.
Yeah, yeah. You know, in fact, I'll tell you when talk about jumpstart the economy.
Oh
You
my God.
know what so many people could do or will do with $5,000 a lump. Let's just say it was $5,000,
Yeah.
and every taxpayer got $5,000. And if you're a couple, that would be 10, right? You're filing jointly, that would be 10, I would assume. I don't know.
Yeah.
And that can be a down payment. That can be pay a credit card off or down, and or pay a car off. It's a huge boost
Yeah.
to the economy, is what it is.
And what I love about it is it directly ties. There's a lot of people, they pay these taxes and no longer tie it to what they should be getting for these taxes. What this would do is tie it directly to the actions that this administration has done for you.
Yeah.
You get your money back that was stolen from you by the Democrat Party. There's no other two ways about it, which of course is why they'll fight the hell out of this, right?
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so you get, so what that, this is similar to that principle. On the other hand, that what 30 or 40% of the population, they won't respond till they're punched in the face. Well, this is a different kind of a punch in the face. So this is like this is a direct result of the party's been stealing from you. We're giving you money back. Now, what is that going to do to people's thinking in the next election? You have one party that's going to fight you getting your money back, and the other party that's giving you your money back. That's a hard argument.
Exactly. Exactly. It was stealing your money, throwing it away. I mean, you know, it's just, oh my God. I'm telling you. Let's see. Kathy says you would have to claim it on your taxes for the year. Well,
Maybe,
there's a
maybe not.
thought, but you know what? There's a thought, but
I wouldn't
we'll
mind that.
we'll
I'll
see
take
what
that
happens
trade-off.
with our taxes.
Because there's also talk about getting rid of the tax code in its entirety, which is another
Yeah.
topic. Um, I don't know if that actually happens, but the fact that we're having a discussion, hey, look, it's another negotiating position.
Yes.
And to
Yeah.
Russ,
So this whole Doge dividend, I mean, this is actually brilliant.
um, it absolutely.
Brilliant.
And the
You
other
know,
side is sitting there arguing about what an evil guy Musk is. So he's evil because him and his minions are finding like places where the money's been wasted. What's evil about that? Goodness knows he doesn't need any money from this, and he isn't being paid to do it. Trump isn't even getting paid, by the way, which is yet another thing. So here's two
right.
characters who are not enriching themselves at the political trough. How many people on the Democratic side, and I think there's going to be an investigation of this, I saw this, have gotten super rich on on relatively, regular income salaries for someone of that stature, like a congresswoman like Maxine Waters living in a multi-million-dollar house in like central LA. What the hell is up with that? We all know about the Pelosi scam.
Yeah. So I guess Musk had made this remark, and then a suggestion came from James Fishback, CEO of investment firm Zoria, who I've never heard of, and that a tax refund check should be sent out to Americans after Doge completes their work in July of 2026. And Fishback's proposal calls for 20% of the 2 trillion in savings, approximately
Mhm.
$400 billion, to be returned to 79 million tax-paying households, and that would roughly be that $5,000 check. Imagine that.
Uh, it's brilliant.
It is brilliant, and it would absolutely help so many people in America, tax-paying citizens. It would. I can just see that, and that goes back to, remember, was it Obama? It was during Obama that I guess it was it the Enron shutdown, and they started paying. Oh, they were going to pay for the banks. They
Hmm.
started saving the banks, and I thought you should give money to every citizen.
Hmm.
That will help our economy, not saving the banks.
Well, that tells you though who they care for.
Yeah, of course, of
They,
course.
they don't
We're
care
not
about
dumb.
the they
It
do
ain't
not care
us.
about the citizen. You first have to get your arms around that. They do not care, and it's hard because so many people are resistant to the old. They fall to the prey of not really willing to say the conspiracy thing, but conspiracies are real. They happen all the time, and are happening.
Well, they are, and boy, they're coming true too. It's something that you think is a conspiracy theorist. Next thing you know, they've all come true. It's crazy. So it is amazing what Elon Musk and his the fellas that people that he's got working with him, and now he's going into, I saw that, well, let's see, somebody said, hey, come on into Fort Knox, let's just audit Fort Knox. and and the Pentagon, they're going, come on in, and we're gonna just have a way, because the all of the department heads are getting appointed, and
I hope I'm
tomorrow.
not misquoting this, but I saw somewhere where all of a sudden there's tons of countries shipping gold back to the United States. What's up with that?
I saw some stuff like that too. I don't know anything about it, and but yeah, what is up with that?
So maybe there's nothing in Fort Knox. I mean,
And
again,
Lori says, "What a time to be alive!" And I'll tell you,
well,
Lori, I said that yesterday at lunch when my brother stopped by, and my mom and I go, "What a time to be alive! Look at what is happening." We I felt that we had, and many did, that we had a lot of corruption and grifting going on when they passed these gigantic omnibus bills, knowing that the Democrat Party is the most well-funded machine, and to see that we've been funding them,
oh, that's absolutely right. We've been funding them, and
you know.
it's
So
amazing. And then the hubris of them. So, for example, the people that work inside these bureaucracies, their thinking is that this is a job for life, and I get paid over 100K and not show up to work and not do anything, and I get a job for life.
yeah,
And then when they get fired and they start interviewing these people, it is like stunning the things they are saying. When you suspect somebody thinks a certain way, that's one thing. When they actually say it to your face, you know, that's like next level. And they thought, hey, it doesn't matter who's elected officials, bureaucracy is here permanently. We're the ones who actually run things. And so you have, and I've always thought this, about 70% of the people that work for the government are basically moochers, and the other 30% carry the other 70%. And that's precisely what we see. They go in and they're whacking like entire departments that have literally contributed nothing. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
it's amazing.
Well, when Trump was on the campaign trail and he talked about making Doge, and Elon Musk would say he would post a meme that's like, "Hello, and what did you do today?" All in the different, whatever department, right? And what was your job? What is your job? And what did you do today? Well, let me tell you, that's the kind of stuff that we're cleaning house, and people there were absolutely there's things are getting slashed, things are positions are being cut, and truthfully it needs to happen.
No, it
It
does.
does. We're so heavy, you can't be top heavy.
And the offers to these people are really generous. They're getting 8 months. Look,
Yes.
you haven't done anything for years, and now you're getting an 8 month severance package. You know, how many people in the private sector get laid off don't get anything near that.
Right.
Um, and now I tell you why they're really crying and whining, because they're actually going to have to work in the next gig, and these people have forgotten how to do it. That's the reason why their panties is in such a knot. And it's true, they're getting treated just like everyone else for the first time. A lot of people got into this grifting profession on purpose,
Yeah.
and now they're being turned out to the reality that every other American faces. So the leftist media keeps trolling, keeps rolling out these people, these sad stories about people who are suddenly without a job and 8 months of vacation pay. Like,
Hmm.
cry me a river.
Yeah.
This is what everybody else deals with all the time.
Yes. Yes. So going back to, let's go to Trump and Zelensky
Mm,
a little bit.
yeah,
Trump has you were talking about, Trump is more brash and Vance is more the diplomat, and yet we had three diplomats, I would say, being our Secretary of State and the other two appointees that are special advisors and for Trump, going and meeting in Saudi Arabia, I think,
right. Saudi Arabia, right, right.
yesterday, and they're now, I believe, in Kiev
Hmm.
and having meetings. And here you have Zelensky going, "I wasn't invited," you
Yeah.
know, and Trump goes, "Yeah, well, you've been at the table already for 3 years. You know, you could have done this already."
You had nothing to say. Him or the Europeans, and he, by the way, who's the head of one of the most corrupt governments on the planet, which is one of these things people forget. He's not elected and refuses to hold an election because he'd probably be turned out. Um, and I think when you think about this, you have to go back to basics, and the basics are this: uh, Ukraine is borders I was a Soviet Union. Give away my age. Ukraine borders Russia. It's a buffer state. They've made it very clear that we're not going to allow Ukraine to join NATO. That they've said that from the beginning, and they've allowed a number of other countries to join NATO that they weren't happy about, and the Europeans keep pressing, pressing, pressing. This peace alliance has worked very well, with everyone knowing full well for the last 40 years that you're going to have these buffer states, and people weren't getting killed en masse like they are now.
Yeah.
And the Europeans have pushed for this, and I suspect because there's a lot of arms dealer money going back and forth, but that's a story for another day. And so nobody want. How can you have a negotiation if you won't sit down with the other power? The Europeans have not sat down with Putin. That's like insane. And the great thing about Trump is he walked in and I'm sitting down with him.
Yes, and Biden wouldn't even go sit down with him. There was nobody in Biden's cabinet capable of frankly brokering peace. One, they didn't want it,
Mhm.
and but two, they were not capable. But Trump has pulled people in that are great communicators and able to pull negotiations off and have the smarts, the geographical awareness, the historical awareness of the implications of what's going on, and have the ability to broker some peace here. And so Trump is kind of hitting Zelensky. He told him, "You should have never started the war." They're having like this tit for tat going back and forth, And Trump actually tells him, you should have never started the war.
And I love because Trump understands where the power really is. I mean, for one thing, who's paying for the defense of Europe, by the way? It's us.
It
If they
is
want to
us.
keep if they want to keep that war going, you pay for it yourself. And by the way, not a single American troop is going to be involved in that. So if you want to like fight Putin, you fight Putin. I love that. That's
Yeah.
precisely what should happen. If you want to keep that war going, you keep it going. But we're not going to support it. Um,
Yeah, and so in this article that's in PJ Media that I posted in the comments there, it's he says that um, Trump says, "I think I have the power to end this, and I think it's going to go very well," and that Zelensky should have never. He said, "Oh well, we weren't invited." Well, you've been there for 3 years, Trump told the reporters at Mar-a-Lago. You should have never started it. You could have made the deal. Well, he didn't. This is about money laundering. It's a war, and sadly, millions of people. I don't know if millions, a lot of people
oh, I
have
think it's
died
probably
on
that.
both
Right.
sides.
Yeah, it's insane. And you break it down to that from a humanitarian perspective, it's like horrible.
Yeah.
And there's no reason for it. And Trump is right. They weren't doing this when he was in office.
No, and Putin had no incentive whatsoever to make a deal with Ukraine. They weren't under any pressure from Biden, and so I'm very glad. Trump talked about all of these things
Mhm.
on the campaign trail, and I'll tell you what I've seen from him. Whatever he speaks to, it's the truth, and it is what he's going to do.
Yeah,
And that's what he's doing.
yeah,
Thank God, because there
absolutely.
needs to be peace there,
Mhm.
and Ukraine should not join NATO, and now it's going to be even smaller.
Yeah, I mean, these fools are willing to push. Remember, the only nuclear peer we have is Russia, and they're willing to press war with Russia. How insane is that?
Yeah,
Um, it's just insane. And Putin's made it very clear. No matter what you think of Putin, he told you what he was going to do. If you try to get Ukraine in NATO, then we're going to war, and that's precisely what happened. No matter what you think of the morality, that doesn't really matter. This is real politics. This is where it's at. They're not going to have NATO in their backyard, just like we weren't going to have Cuba having missiles in our backyard.
that's right. That's right, and it's no different. It truly, truly is no different than that right there. We have an ocean that is a buffer zone for us,
Mhm.
and there's not very much distance between us and Cuba
No.
for sure. But
You
it's
look at it from Russians' perspective. We forget this piece of history, but they've had Napoleon come through and invade Russia. They've dealt with that. This is all like only a couple of generations ago, and then they had Hitler come through and do the same thing. So yeah, if you were them, you'd want a buffer state too.
yeah, yeah, and we had peace, but it is the I remember seeing all of the aerial shots of the tanks, all the buildup,
Mhm.
outside of Ukraine, going, why aren't they stopping this?
No,
Why isn't anybody stopping this? Because it's going to be a slaughter on both sides. There's
you know,
no good coming out of this.
because
But
Sonny, I think at the end of the day, the elite, these people are pawns. Remember that old analogy about chess? They're the back row players, and everybody else is pawns, and they just don't. They do things where they don't feel the pain of what they do. And this is a classic example of that. So if a bunch of middle class and lower class Ukrainians die, they don't care.
yeah,
If Russian troops die, heck, they even sent North Koreans, and they're at the bottom of the
yeah,
barrel.
oh yeah,
Yeah, and we go
absolutely.
out to them, no problem.
And and I don't remember how many. There was a mass exodus as this was going, coming in, a mass exodus of those Ukrainians that had the money or the ability to walk out and leave, fly out and leave. And it's the poorer people, and sadly, that were left to deal with this. And it's it's an unfortunate situation that didn't have to happen, and it didn't, and it wasn't happening under Trump. And but when the globalists stir the pot, and the armorists, those that the armament, those that are making arms, oh yeah, we're gonna make money. Okay, let's go. You
I
know, I can just see that. But Trump is like kicking ass and taking names.
Oh, it's awesome. It makes you reflect once again on people like Eisenhower and his famous military industrial complex speech.
Hmm.
He was spot on, except now you could add the pharmaco food industry complex to that too,
Oh yeah.
which is a nice segue into thank goodness RFK was confirmed. The least likely person to get confirmed, him and Tulsi Gabbard. And this is the amazing thing. I remember when they were running for office, the Democrats on the and had all those Democrats on the stage. And I thought, the only two people on that stage that I consider voting for would be RFK or Tulsi. And those are the very two who got kicked out of the party. So
Yes.
it's just a welcome home, Tulsi and RFK, by the way, right? They left you,
Yeah.
you can leave them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And they're just before coming on tonight, my husband called me. He goes, "Sonny, you got to come watch this." He was watching Newsmax,
Mhm.
and there is talk about ending the COVID-19 vax in the United States.
That is.
And I'll tell you, that's the type of thing that has to happen. It
Mhm.
needs to not be mandated. Trump already signed a mandate about schools. No
Mhm.
mandate for the vax
Yes.
in any school,
Mhm.
in the United States. But truthfully, that's not enough. It needs to be that there is no mandate anywhere, and that should be eliminated. There's a lot of talk, and RFK is Bobby Kennedy is doing fabulous in what he is uh, his goals. He's very clear in his goals and what he wants to do, and I'm so thankful that. And so we have to have a little patience. But you know what? Things are happening at lightning speed. It's so dang exciting.
When they start forcing him to produce the evidence that they
Yes.
use to approve that, to produce the results of the damage that it did to people, talking about the facts, and then start producing the same evidence around these food additives and what they've done to the food supply,
Yes.
he's going to get all that because our life expectancy has literally been declining. I don't even think we're in the top five anymore. What in the heck? But we're spending more. The average American's on something like what, six drugs or something? It's like insane. And when they start pulling back the curtain on that whole thing, it's just as scandalous as what's happening on the military industrial complex side of things. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Well, it is going to be interesting. And and even before even before RFK got confirmed, the food manufacturers, let's see, one of the very first things that I can remember happened, it's the company, I don't know if it's Nabisco, whatever company that makes a little cheese and crackers,
Mhm.
thing that's in the school. They like
Right.
pulled it all out of the schools. And I go, why did they pull that out of schools? Well,
That
that's a
tells you right
rhetorical
there.
question.
They see the train coming down the tracks,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I saw Schumer on like one of these networks screaming about RFK, and there's no reason this guy should be like, should get this position. Why most people come from this, they always come from the pharma industry, and they got to have at least pharma industry experience. And I thought to myself, precisely, we
Yes.
want people who come from outside of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Um, that's precisely what we want. Just like Trump's an outsider. We want people that came from someplace else or people who've been victimized by it, like Tulsi Gabbard. They know what it's like to be targeted by these organizations, and it's just great.
Well, it is. And so with the vaccines, I'm not an anti-vax person. Hell, I've had so many. I've never had that one though, but I've had lots of others. And but it's all about the science, and that's what I like RFK is saying. Bobby Kennedy's going, it's let's show us the science, show us the study that you've done, let's bring the results out. And because true science is to be questioned, it's
Mhm.
not to be silenced, it's to be questioned. And they have peer reviewed studies, and whatnot, just lay it out there, and then we'll make a decision. And one of the things he said that I really, really like, he's right from the get-go of get his confirmation, he says, we're not going to ban all vaccines, but we will have the you'll know, what's the term I'm trying to think of, when you'll know what's in it,
Full
you know.
disclosure. Full
Pardon?
disclosure. Full disclosure.
Full disclosure. Yeah, exactly. You'll know what the risks are to it, of the benefits, and any shot that I've ever had, I have always asked the doctor, "What's the efficacy?"
Mhm.
Every single one, and
Yeah.
I go, "No, I don't think so." On some, and
What about
others,
the regular flu vaccine? I remember years ago when I was in the military, that was one of the offerings. They didn't make you do it, but it was available. And I remember looking at it, and it's like there's like no evidence that does any better, at least in the age group I was in then, that it gives you any benefit whatsoever. So why bother putting this in your body if there's like no benefit? I don't think there was any harm back then, but there was no benefit either. So
right,
why bother? And that's just basic, and they're not allowing it to be done. And here's the other side of that. How much of this stuff could be taken care of with some inexpensive stuff you could walk in and get over the counter at the pharmacy? Vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, and some of the horse stuff that they like beat up all over the place in the last
right.
few years. That's been dirt cheap and generic for years. Um, they don't want you to get that because
No,
that's become the
no.
pharma industry.
And it was informed consent. Thank you, Lori. That's exactly the informed consent. And I also agree with Lori Shaw of saying they flat out broke the Nuremberg Code, and they did. But we and this is why it's awesome that we have Trump and Bobby Kennedy coming in and going, I just want to make America healthy. And to hear Bobby Kennedy say, I've prayed for 30 years and God gave me Trump. That is awesome.
It
I
is.
mean, it gives me chills
Mhm.
because it was an answer to prayer. And look at what is happening. It's not going to just benefit us. This type of remake and having freedom of speech and informed consent and know what the hell the results of the studies are is going to help remake the world, not just America. We are actually helping the world. And if Elon Musk had not bought X
Mhm.
and Trump not got elected, it'd be
Oh my
entirely different.
goodness. Yeah, it was frightening their control over the
Yeah,
media, and,
yeah.
and the information control that they wielded, just blinded so many people with what they did. Fortunately, there's still enough Americans who are capable of thinking, who could see it, and thankfully we're able to have people like Musk come along and get on board at just the right time. So that's I don't think that's spiritual. That's
It is.
that
It
part.
is not a coincidence. It's not an accident. And thank God for that, right?
Right.
Thank God for that. So, and like Les says, they redefined the word vaccine. That was not, they had to make it. Well, no, because a vaccine actually prevented something, you know?
Yeah.
It was
And it goes back.
crazy to the length that they were going.
And leftists always play with the language. This goes back to the Orwell concept, right? They
Mhm.
changed the language. So the word gay doesn't mean what it used to mean.
Yeah.
As a classic example of that, there's words that just don't have the meaning they used to have. And that causes confusion. Very biblical concept is the old Tower of Babel thing. If you're unable to communicate, you're unable to reason. If you're unable to reason, you become unreasonable. And if we're unreasonable, the whole thing falls apart. It goes back, and that goes back to the importance of having a common culture. This is the other thing that never gets really talked about because they'll slap the label racist on you for saying this. But if you don't have a common set of beliefs around how you're going to behave, then a society can't function. And one of the reasons why I'll call it the Judeo-Christian United States has been able to function so well, better than any other country in history, is because we've had this common set of values. That doesn't necessarily mean you're Jewish, doesn't necessarily mean you're Christian, but you behaved with a certain set of standard behaviors that you could expect. So if you're a woman, you don't have to have a bag over your head, right? You can get a job. You cross the street, somebody's going to stop to see a person waiting at the crosswalk. You see the bus, and it's a little flag comes out that says stop. People actually stop.
Yeah.
Um, 93% of the people that go in the store don't steal anything, and there's no guards in the store. That all works, and it only works because we have a shared culture. And we let in too many people too fast who don't have that, then you wind up with disaster. And we saw that, for example, and we laugh about it, but the whole case in Ohio, whatever, can't remember the name of the town, where was it 30,000 Haitians are flooding the place,
Right.
city of only like 90,000. So you replace the population with a 33% change. That's not going to work. And you can't tell me for 1 second the elites didn't know that and weren't doing that on purpose. That is a recipe. They used the word Balkans for a reason, because in the Balkans in World War I, the Ottoman Empire spoke, I think it was something like 15 different languages. So if you're the officer trying to run troops and you got to speak 50 different languages, what's the likelihood you're going to be successful? The likelihood is zero. And that's why
Right.
in World War I, they talked about the Axis powers. The Axis powers were really Germany, because the other countries were like worthless because they don't even have a common culture. And that's what they're trying to do, destroy the United States. And I know I just rambled a bit, but that is so important. It's foundational.
It is important. And how long have we gone in our stores and all the merchandise did not have to be locked up, Don?
Yeah.
And now it's, Katie bar the doors, they
Mhm.
lock up, the underwear even, because they don't want it flying off the shelf. And that is exactly what you're talking about. Because when people are coming from other countries and they don't have the same values that we do, we value life here a lot in the United States. And we value another person's stuff, that it's theirs and you leave it alone. We have that, and so many countries don't. It's get what you can, catch as catch can, and what yours is mine, and my, is
Yeah, you can't have freedom without a moral code. It just
no,
won't work. You have to
no,
have policemen on every corner, and that's one of the reasons why this has been so successful. And you bring it down to, like, and that's great to personalize it, bring it down to your home, your own, what you see in your own living environment. So like in my neighborhood, you go to buy razor blades, you got to go to a special counter to get razor blades, for example. Now
right?
this is minor. There's certain neighborhoods where the left has completely destroyed the second thing you got to have, that's an operational family. So you go into those neighborhoods where illegitimacy is like 80%.
Hmm.
And and I think in San Francisco, there's stores where you can't get in. You have to tell them what you want and they go get it for you. Now, how crazy is that? There's no the profit margins of stores operate around 1%. You can't survive doing that. And that's why a lot of these stores have closed in these neighborhoods. Um, and
Yeah.
then they have food deserts. And then the left wants to complain about why they have food deserts. Well, they have food deserts because you destroyed the family, which transmits the moral code to the next generation. That next generation has no moral code. Now it's
Mhm.
a police state. Um,
And you think, let me tell you, in years ago, I'm going to talk about in the late 80s in Guatemala. It was so bad that a little tienda, it was just that you went up and you knocked on a little door, you told them what you wanted, and you didn't have direct access like this to the person. You had to put the money in and it went around a corner, so that you couldn't just stick a gun in on somebody. The thieving, and I know this story, my husband's told me this story lots
mhm.
of times. He spent some time there in Guatemala, El Salvador. And so that's when you have people, and I'm not saying everybody is like that from those countries, but when you have that element coming here, especially in the gangs, coming here, this is like, oh my God, it's free in America. It's so easy to grab your shit.
And the thing is, that old thing, the police like said, the thin blue line is true. It doesn't take that many to tip it over, though. I mean, you
Yeah.
take a look at El Salvador, for example. I think that giant prison they built down there, I
Oh,
think it
yeah.
had like 60,000 people or something, right? The entire population of the country is around 5 or 6 million. But what that basically tells you, and now the place is a paradise because they locked up all these people, right?
Yes.
So whatever percentage 60,000 is of 5 million, you can do the math around that. That's not a huge number.
No.
Um, it's not a huge number. And I know that I think the ratio in the United States roughly is there's one cop for every 20,000 citizens, something like that, which tells you that the vast majority of people behave. But if that number gets much above, I'll use the rate at you see at stores, the pilferage rate at the average store in the United States. If it gets above 3%, some store managers getting fired. I mean, that's how tight the margins are. So the vast majority of stores, 97% of the people aren't doing that. But
Right.
if you get into these blue cities where maybe that number's like 10%, those stores can't be there anymore. That's
No.
why your Walmarts and Targets are fleeing Chicago like the plague.
Yeah, so this is a good segue into the gangs. I just posted a story in the comments that's from the Epic Times that the US, Trump has officially declared the Mexican cartels and foreign gangs as global terrorists.
That is so awesome.
Well, it is. And because terrorists go to Gitmo.
Mhm.
Terrorists, this I feel I there's lots I don't know about this, but I feel like that has just allowed any law enforcement agency to just like go after them.
So now
It's
it's the military can go after him versus the
yeah,
domestic
okay.
police. That's essentially what that means.
So if we get those people out of here, and I know they're around, even in my community. I see them. I see the destruction of them, the graffiti. It tells me MS-13's here,
Hmm.
and some others that I don't know what that lettering means. And frankly, I want it all cleaned up because it was Biden who allowed them in, and it needs to happen. I'm happy to have my tax dollars. I will forfeit my $5,000 tax rebate to help fund getting the gangs, the terrorists, the hell out of the United States.
It's the whole Biden administration. What they did is worse than letting them in. They encourage them to come
Yes,
in. They're
yes,
putting them up in 5-star hotels in New York City. It's like it's unbelievable. What gets me about that is the hubris they had to think that they could get away with that. That people in Democrat, and this should be anyone living in a Democrat controlled city should be insulted. That they thought you were so stupid that you weren't going to say anything while they closed down your community centers, put these people in your schools, took the police off your streets, let your daughters get raped and your husbands and wives beaten up in the streets while these people are living in 5-star hotels. If that's not enough of an insult, on your dime to boot, and you paid for it. Um,
yes. And this is something that in Trump's first term, he considered designating these groups as terror organizations, but ultimately he did not. He hasn't wasted any time.
yeah,
He's done it, and we're going to get him gone. And I am so thankful, uh, because we need this. These people, just these gangs and that are terrorizing our area. They're not contributing to it. This is not who's picking your crops. This is not the H-2B visas, receive recipients.
and this is none of those things. I just have to go on for a second. What the left loves to say is, and it's so insulting for them to say this: "Who's going to pick your crops?" Now, how how patronizing and insulting is that? So, as if the only people who can pick crops are people who have brown skin. It's like unbelievable that they can't even hear themselves, but they say this sort of thing. But the other thing I would say too is there's plenty of Americans who would do those jobs. If those jobs were available to do, and you didn't have this insane minimum wage that you have, that is a jobs killer to the lower class and a career killer to those trying to get their careers off the ground. And I don't know if I described this little quick story I had personally, but I was helping somebody. I went out and actually applied, or had a friend apply to these fast food jobs. Couldn't find them. I mean, they were saying they were all advertising that they had jobs. Some of them even had signs up. Applied online, never got a call. And at the end of the day, the reason why is because when the minimum wage is that high, you're not going to hire somebody who's got no experience.
Right.
Now you're treating that minimum wage job. It's like you're only going to get skilled people who've been around because you can't afford to take a chance and you can't afford to train anybody anymore. So they've basically cut off the first rung on the ladder for those kids who come from lower class backgrounds. They can't even get a first rung job. When we were kids, I'm sure you remember this, Sonny. You walk into a McDonald's, you get a job on the spot. Sit down, fill out the piece of paper. When do you want to start? How about 4 o'clock? Right?
Right.
They can't do that anymore. Um, so
No.
it's horrible what the left has done.
No, and McDonald's, I never worked a fast food place. Although I did flip burgers at our bowling alley in town.
Mhm.
But other than that, I did not work, and that didn't last long, but that's a whole
Yeah.
nother story.
Mhm.
Not my fault. Anyway, but McDonald's used to be the largest first time employer ever,
Yeah.
but not now. I would assume not now
Well, I'm
because
sure it's not now.
it costs a lot of money to train an employee.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I want to say like in the 80s, they used to brag something like 1 in 5 American kids that worked at a
Yeah.
McDonald's, right? And that not even accounting about the other ones like Burger King, Wendy's, all those other ones. And I worked a number of McDonald's gigs in high school, and I thought it was fun, plus money in my pocket, right?
Right.
And I'll always say there's nothing wrong with a McDonald's job. That's how you learn how to work.
Well,
Uh,
you know what? They taught more than work. They taught
oh,
you how to appear, your appearance.
oh yeah, how to
They
talk.
taught you a lot of things, right?
Yeah, yeah, they were a great and are a great organization, but what
Yes,
the
they are.
government's done to them is
Yeah.
terrible. So now they're doing everything they can to reduce hiring people. You see this with the kiosks. It's the same thing they've done to the grocery stores, right?
Yeah.
The reason why this self-service is up because your government's killed the ability for companies to afford to hire the guy who walks you to your car with the groceries. You get to do it all yourself now. Thank
Yeah.
you, government.
Yes. So, hey, we're going to wrap it up here. Lori Shaw mentioned about Vance Day. So,
Mhm.
Oregon's Judge Vance Day happens to be a personal friend of mine. We've had him here on Captive Audience. He has gone to work for the Department of Justice, and congratulations, Vance. He is a senior counselor of the Department of the Attorney General's office.
All right.
And he actually started yesterday was his intake day, from what I understand. I've talked to him the other day
Mhm.
and texted with him a little bit. And just congratulations. I'll tell you, Vance Day is a fighter for our civil liberties, he's a constitutional believer and follower. He is fabulous. It's wonderful knowing somebody of his integrity is in DC on the Trump helping out our country. I can't wait to hear more. I don't know that I will, but I can't wait to hear more. But I'm excited for our friend Vance Day there, and I think that's exciting. Right here, and in my talking to him, I don't want to speak for him,
Mhm.
but something he said, and somebody else that I was speaking to as well, not just Vance, that our country needs good conservative people working for them. They're
Mhm.
getting like they're clearing out jobs that are the Biden era appointees. So if you have a special skill and would like to go to DC and work a while and help your country, there's jobs to apply to. And I encourage you to do it because frankly, our country needs you.
Right. That's 100% true. That's
Yeah.
100%
And
true.
I heard Trump very quickly today say that our military recruitment is the best it's been in 50
Oh,
years. The
you know,
excitement of people coming in. And I love hearing that.
I knew that would happen. I knew
Yeah,
that would happen. As soon as you got rid of that DEI stuff, and you got rid of guys that report to men in dresses, you're gonna have warriors want to come back to go to the military, and that is great. I mean, I've known of dads who tell the kids, "Nope, no way, don't go. Don't go unless this election
sure,
changes things," and that
sure.
happened. So it's awesome.
It is awesome. So, hey, everybody, thanks for joining us. Don't forget to like and share, spread our message around so our viewership grows. We'd love to have everybody. We appreciate your feedback. A lot of great comments tonight, a lot of feedback. Thank you so very much. And we will see you on Friday. And oh my gosh, we'll see what happens tomorrow, but we'll
Who
be
knows
back.
what happens over? Who knows what could happen in 8 hours?
Yeah. That's
Um,
right. It's things are happening quickly, and it's exciting to see. Tomorrow, Cash Patel should be confirmed. Say your prayers. Call your representatives, senators, and tell them vote for Cash. And Cash Patel confirmation for the FBI. Oh my gosh.
that would be
Oh my gosh.
another outfit that's got to be gutted. So that's great.
It is. Have a great night, everybody. See you
Not
Friday.
everybody.